Well, this is what we have, and I'm talking history here, going back to the late 1st and 2nd century. Look at what we have. A promise written by Paul in the book of Ephesians that God is sending pastors and teachers to help the church grow, and they've been there from the beginning. One is called the Ancient, meaning he was there at the beginning. His name is Papias, and he was a companion of John. And then there's Polycarp, a companion, possibly a convert, a man who was ordained by John to the church of Smyrna, because John the Apostle was at Ephesus. He's the one that was leaning on the Lord's breast, and that John there is the one at the cross who says he saw blood and water come out, and the writer says, I testify of those things. In John chapter 20 and 21. Now listen to me. It is John. Why? Because Irenaeus wrote a 5-volume encyclopedia about early 1st and 2nd century Christianity. It's extant, meaning we don't have the originals. Now, that happens with Tacitus, the Roman historian, and tons of other history. I mean, the biography of Alexander the Great is 400 years after the fact in the 1st century, by Plutarch. And that's important to remember. So here's what we have. We have Irenaeus, my friend, who wrote that 5-volume encyclopedia, and he mentions Papias and Polycarp as being companions, and on top of that, of John. So, in the writings of Irenaeus, according to Bart Ehrman, we can place Irenaeus, my friend, in Polycarp's house, living with him, and Bart says so. I mean, he has first-hand knowledge of what Polycarp knew about John the Apostle, because Polycarp was a convert of John the Apostle. And that's life, and it is what it is. Papias at Hierapolis, northern Galatia, there as the ancient man is also companion. Irenaeus says so. He lived with Polycarp. We have evidence that Irenaeus wrote a letter to Florinus, a pastor in Rome, and states clearly he knew the Apostle John. And what's familiar to them is that their doctrine is the same. They're fighting Gnostics and heretics. Irenaeus wrote that letter to Florinus. We're going to look at it. He also wrote a letter to the bishop Victor. Also stating the fact that he knew the Apostle John. And again, all the doctrine is the same, fighting heretics. Irenaeus and the bathhouse. Now, in that public bathhouse, he had conversations with Polycarp, Irenaeus says, and they rebuked a heretic there named Cencreus. Literally, in public, Irenaeus and Polycarp in the bathhouse. Now, John the Apostle may very well have kept the Sabbath. Think about it, he's Jewish, so did Polycarp. Now listen to me. Polycarp wrote a letter to the Philippians, and there he says he was educated by the apostles. They preached the Gospels to them. Now Papias and Polycrates, that's in Upper Galatia. Polycrates, being the pastor there, mentions Papias as an ancient one, placing him at the beginning. There's some apostolic eldership links there too, and who was pastoring what at the time. And we have the promise of Ephesians chapter 4:11. Later, 100 years later, the church father Eusebius quotes some of the stuff that Papias wrote. And then Polycarp's letter to the Philippians, chapter 6. My friend, very important info. We're going to take a good look at Papias of Hierapolis. And here it is. It was Irenaeus in his 5-volume encyclopedia that declares and describes Papias as the hearer of John, companion of Polycarp. Papias, who is the ancient, to which we have 10 citations. That's it. The books are lost. His 5 volumes are lost. We only have 10 citations collected by Irenaeus and mentioned again 100 years later by Eusebius. He clearly describes John and Polycarp and Papias as companions. Clearly John was alive, and he places John and the hearer of John in the present tense. This is exactly what Shank, a historian, says, and tons of other scholars, that it is written in the present tense describing the fact that he's still alive. Eusebius, 100 years later, says the same thing. 5 books, mentions Irenaeus. These things Papias, who was a hearer of John and a companion of Polycarp. When we see ecclesiastical history, that's Eusebius. When we see against heresies, well, that's Irenaeus. Now, Papias in the writing says, if then anyone came who had been a follower of the elders, I questioned him regarding the words of the elders. Anybody that knew the apostles, he says, what I asked about Andrew, Peter, they were both brothers. He knew that, right? Philip and Thomas and James. And here's the John. He wants to know about people that knew this John, okay? To corroborate what's going on, because he knows there's going to be false letters. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And then he says this. That's all past tense. In the present tense, he says, and what things that Ariston and the elder John say. I want to hear the abiding voice. And here's Bart Ehrman, who makes it clear. The tense changed from past to present. What they're asking now from this John, who was still alive. Papias, the hearer. Now, he also says that Philip, the apostle, resided at Hierapolis, where he had 2 daughters there. The apostle. Because after him came Polycrates, mentioning Papias as an ancient one. Now listen to me. Papias knows Barsabas, who drank deadly poison and lived. It's one of the 10 statements we have by him. Irenaeus of Lyons was from France, my friend, modern-day France. And he lived, was possibly converted, Bart Ehrman says, to Christianity. Now we're talking about a convert of Polycarp, Irenaeus. Bart Ehrman agrees. Now listen, he says in one of the writings, Matthew wrote it in Hebrew. Makes sense, he was writing to Jewish people. Peter and Paul went to Rome and laid the foundation of the church. They didn't start it. After their departure, Mark followed Peter, and Luke obviously followed Paul. Afterwards, John, the disciple of the Lord, who leaned on the Lord's breast, very important, published his gospel where? At Ephesus, where he resided in Asia. And there are 4 gospels, now listen to me, and only 4, because they're first century eyewitness account. Matthew and John to Jesus, Luke and Mark to the leading apostles, Peter and Paul. Listen to me. Now, the John we're talking about is the one that's leaning on the Lord's breast, to which we know is John the Apostle. Listen, he's the one that ran away naked in the garden because the gospel's written in the third-person narrative, common in that day and era, like Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, Josephus, Xenophon, and a boatload of others. Now listen, the apostle that Jesus loved is John the Apostle. He would have been about 27 years of age, a pupil of Polycarp. Who says that? Bart Ehrman, man. We can place Irenaeus in the bathhouse and in Polycarp's house. I mean, think about that. Perhaps a convert, again mentioned and cited by Bart Ehrman. Irenaeus writes, I can even describe the place where the blessed Polycarp used to sit and discourse, his going in and his going out, his lifestyle he lived with him, his general mode of life. I mean, think about personal appearance, his discourse, and the messages he delivered to the people. He would speak familiar intercourse with John. Right away, the pagan mind goes dirty. It's talking about they shared, they talked. Now, it's important because Bart Ehrman supports that view. Good old Bart has lots to say about it. He says the statements of Irenaeus are corroborated by Eusebius because he cites both of them, who in his boyhood had known, perhaps lived with Polycarp, and of the other writers, according to Irenaeus. Gives the citation. Polycarp had